So this is a diagram of the whole model and how it works. Research shows that there are really three phases that people move through when recovering from trauma. Any really intense experience that may not really rise to the level of trauma, but it is still an adverse experience. The Safety, Grieving, and Reconnecting by Judith Herman, she wrote about that in her book. But in my opinion, I think these phases are really vague and undefined. And in order to replicate treatment models, you have to have more definition. And so there are people have worked on the phase one, people have worked on phase two, and they have come up with different models. But my goal was to bring everything together in one comprehensive model. I could put together a plan for both the client and for the provider to use. And then because I'm integrating spirituality into the model, I also paired each phase with a focus on a spiritual virtue. And each phase is designed to be progressive. Each phase builds on the previous. Some of the models that I've been trained in for trauma recovery that focused on only one phase, maybe just phase one, seemed to keep people stuck in phase one and didn't really get them moving forward to phase two. So I wanted to design the model to move the person forward, to motivate them to move forward. And because really the heart of recovery is the phase two reprocessing and grieving model. The other thing I'd seen is that for the secular model I used, we started right in phase two without any phase one. And what was happening is we were losing people because they were not prepared. They hadn't moved through the safety phase. And so they were going right into the reprocessing and grieving phase, and they weren't ready for that, and we would lose them. And I saw that some counselors I trained were very successful, and others just weren't. They couldn't get it to work for them. And I think a lot of that was about the preparation, about the phase one. I tended to naturally do some of the phase one processes that I'm going to share with you today. But some people didn't. They didn't do any of those phase one processes. And so they couldn't get clients moving forward. And then some people would just immediately leave at the end of phase two and they floundered. And so phase three, I designed to externalize the inner healing that was completed in phase two. So the phases work together to bring healing from the impact of trauma starting on the inside and moving out, as opposed to moving from outside in. The model assumes that people are resilient. I believe that God created us to be resilient, created us to survive, and even wired into us healing. So my definition of resilient is the ability to heal from wounds inflicted by painful experiences. You think about rubber is resilient. It can be bent and it pops back up to its shape. And humans are amazingly resilient. It is amazing what humans survive and are able to keep going on, changed, but surviving. And we can see that physically, how God has wired us to heal. Doctors don't do magic. They actually work with the way the body is genetically wired to heal. And so I think for emotional and spiritual healing, psychological healing, we have to work with the way our brain is wired. And understanding how our brain is wired and how healing takes place as a counselor, as a caretaker, then we have to work with that and not against it. And then as we heal from past wounds, much like when you heal from a broken bone, that area of the bone becomes stronger than the other areas. And when we heal from past trauma, we become more resilient to future trauma wounds. Not that we're not affected, but that we now are resilient and have the pathway for healing. So the 12 STR model has phases, and then I took those phases and broke them down into stages within each phase. And these are designed to act as stepping stones strategically placed around the pitfalls of trauma recovery. And so this is a complete map, if you will, of the process that clients go through, and that you, as a facilitator, can walk the client through.